This video will help prepare you for reading and understanding the data mapping document your Sumac data migration expert has created. Your data migration expert has analyzed the contents of each spreadsheet you sent them in order to determine how your data will be migrated into Sumac. From this analysis, they have created a data mapping document that specifies how the data in each column of each file will be migrated and where it will live in Sumac. The data mapping document looks like this. The first page of the mapping document summarizes your data. The table of contents is presented first, followed by some general notes about your mapping. Typically, this portion summarizes the version of Sumac you've purchased, the number of contacts your database is licensed to hold, and which add-ons you're licensed for as well. It also indicates the total number of contacts included in the data you sent for migration. The first page will also outline any importing guidelines you requested. Each file you sent us will be listed in the data mapping document, along with a brief summary of the name of the file, the number of columns in the file, the number and type of records in the file, and how many contacts will be added to Sumac as a result of this file. Following that is a table that outlines all the details of the data in that file. You'll notice a section just above this table labeled Conversion Notes, which provides a summary of the actions taken by the data migration team when converting this file into Sumac. These notes often summarize importing actions that will be taken that don't follow along with a typical migration. For example, you might see notes about a number of contacts who do not have names associated with them, and what the migration team will do when migrating these unknown contacts into the database. This first column represents the columns as they appear in the original spreadsheet file you sent us. Each column in that spreadsheet will have its own row in this table. The second column tells you the area of Sumac this data will be migrated into. For example, the data in the first name column from your original spreadsheet will be migrated into the contact record for that contact in Sumac. Sometimes, data from one column in your spreadsheet will appear in two separate areas of Sumac. For example, this column holds an ID number representing a contact in your spreadsheet. You'll notice that this ID number will appear in the contact area of Sumac, as each contact in your database will have a corresponding ID number. This ID number will also appear in the donation record as a donor's contact ID. Another good example of this is when data in one column of your old spreadsheet actually represents a new contact who will be added to the Sumac database. For example, in your old spreadsheet, you had a column for a spouse's name. In Sumac, rather than just having a field for a spouse's name, the spouse will be migrated into its own contact record. The migration team will create a relationship between the first contact and their spouse to indicate that they are spouses. The third column represents the tab in Sumac on which this data will appear. Many records in Sumac use different tabs to separate different types of data stored in a single record. For example, in Sumac, a contact record has several different tabs used for capturing different kinds of contact information. Your data migration expert will indicate which tab this data will appear on once it has been migrated into Sumac, so that you know exactly where to go when looking for this type of information. Some records in Sumac do not use tabs. In this case, you'll notice the tab in Sumac section is empty. The field name in Sumac column tells you exactly which field in the Sumac database this piece of data will be stored in. For example, all the data from the first name column in your original spreadsheet will be migrated into the first name field in Sumac. You'll notice here that Sumac has different fields for different parts of a contact's name. A contact's prefix, first name, middle name, last name, and suffix all have distinct fields in Sumac. Based on the data you send, your migration expert will do their best to split each part of a contact's name into each of these distinct fields. The data type column indicates what type of data the field in Sumac holds. For example, the first name field in Sumac holds text. The receivable amount field in Sumac holds a currency amount. The when received field in Sumac holds a date. The special instructions for cleanup and migration column holds any special instructions that your data migration expert will take when cleaning and migrating the data from this column in your spreadsheet. This column will also come in handy for you when determining how the data from this column will be migrated. For example, if this column in your original spreadsheet was completely empty, you will see Discard Empty here, which instructs your data migration expert to discard this column because there isn't any data there to migrate. The last two columns in this table are used internally by the Sumac data migration team. The column labeled C is what the migration experts use to indicate the data in this column has been cleaned. The column labeled I indicates that the data in this column has been imported into your new Sumac database. Finally, at the end of the mapping document is a glossary of terms used throughout the mapping document. This is helpful to you as it gives additional instruction and clarity to what certain terms mean and how they're used in the mapping. If you are ever reading through your data mapping document and are unsure of what some special instructions mean, double-check the glossary at the end of your mapping document to find out. You will also see a section here labeled Default Values. Since Sumac has mandatory fields in every area, and some of that data may be missing from the data you send us for importing, your data migration expert will assign default values to those mandatory fields. For example, you may send us data about donations you've received, but for some of those donations, the date you received the donation is missing in the data you sent us. Since the date received is a mandatory field in Sumac, your data migration expert will assign a default value for the date that donation was received, and will document all those default values here. Now that you have watched this video, it's time to start reviewing your data mapping document. Be sure to read through your data mapping document very carefully, and make sure you understand it. Since the data mapping document will serve as the Sumac team's instruction manual for migrating your data, it is important that you understand the document so that you can be sure the data will be migrated according to your preferences. Keep in mind that once your data is migrated into Sumac, it will look different. Data that used to be stored in a single column in your old spreadsheets will now have its own designated field in your new Sumac database. This is a good thing, but remember to expect that the data will look different now that it's being moved into a different system. Also keep in mind that because Sumac is an intelligent database, it makes it very easy to see inconsistencies in your data that you were unable to see in your old systems. This is a good thing too, as you'll start to notice holes in how you were collecting data and can brainstorm new ways of improving how you collect data in the future. But remember that migrating into Sumac does not magically fix these problems. You should expect that some cleanup will be required after the data migration is done. It is impossible, and indeed inappropriate, for the Sumac migration team to make changes to your data when they migrate it. It will be up to you to clean up these inconsistencies once you get your new Sumac database. As you read through the mapping, compile a list of questions that arise so that you can review them with your data migration expert during a scheduled call.